So some questions won't will need you to actually draw an array. So if we look at this question, draw an array to represent 5 times 3 or 5 groups of 3, it's easier to think of it as 5 groups of 3. So how many groups are we drawing? 5. How many are going to be in each group? 3. So we've got how many groups? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many are in each group? 3. 1, 2, 3. Or we could draw it this way. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 1, 2, 3. Even though this question is worded differently because it says how many different arrays can you build with 16 counters, it's asking you to do the same. What arrays can you do? So what number sentences can you make using 16 counters? So the first one we could do straight away. We could have one group of 16 or 16 times 1, because remember all we have to do is swap the numbers round. So that's 2. 16. If I had 16 counters, if I know that 8 times 2 is 16, 2 times 8 equals 16. So that's another way we could split the 16 up. As I say, we can look, if you know your timetables, you should know 16. If the answer is 16, 8 times 2 is 16. Again, just re-emphasizing how important knowing these timetables are. Okay? Looking at this, we can't really split it into groups of 3 because we'd have one spare, so we can't do that one. But if we split it into groups of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 4. So 4 times 4. Now we can't swap those around because they're the same number. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways of splitting them. Now, when looking at those sums that we've just looked at just now, if we sort of put them in order, the first one we looked at was 16 times 1, or 1 times 16. Okay. To give you 2 groups, we chopped the number in half. We chopped those counters in half and put them into 2 groups. Okay, so we've halved the total number and we've doubled the amount of groups that we've done. Now we tried to do groups of 3, it didn't work. So we then put them into groups of 4. Now if you notice that times 4, if you double the number 2, we get the number 4. Because we're doubling this side, we have to half the total amount. So looking at this one, we've had 16, we've chopped it in half to make 2 groups. So that's given us the 8 times 2. If we chop this in half again, and double the amount of groups, we've got 4 groups of 4. So you've got to think about, if you have, I think you've got to think about as well, with your total number, it's got to be an even number, because you cannot chop an odd number in half. So for example, if it was 9, we couldn't put it into groups of 2. Couldn't put it into groups of 2, couldn't half it because it's an odd number. So this is just something that's really handy if you know that your number is even. Remember, those even numbers are the numbers that end in 2, 4, 6, 8 and 0. Because I know that straight away, if I've got, for example, 24, I can chop that in half. So divide that by 2 is 12. If I chopped it in half again, half of 12, 6. If I chop that in half, half of 6 is 3. I can't chop 3 in half because it's an odd number. Final question we're going to look at is this. So it says, what do you see? And then we've got 4 people who are going to give statements about what they see. So the first person says, I see 2 times 6, or 2 groups of 6. This person says, I see 6 groups of 2. This person says, I see 3 groups of 4 and 4 groups of 3. And this person says, I see 1, 12 and 12 ones. Let's have a look and go through each of them to see if what they see is correct. So I see 2 times 6, so 2 groups of 6. If we did that, there we go. So this person is correct. Now, because this person's correct, remember with multiplication we can just swap these numbers around. So this one as well is also correct. I see 3 groups of 4. There we go, nice even groups. And of course, if that's 3 times 4, then 4 times 3 is also correct. And we should know that if we split it into one group, then it'd just be a circle around, and then 12 ones would just be a circle around each of those circles. Can you now have a go at the rest of the questions, please?